Welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and joining me today is Barbara Stanke. And Barbara works with the hospice program at Middlesex Community Hospital, our award-winning community hospital. And I don't know very much at all about the hospice program, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to find out from the source what it even means to have, what is hospice and who uses hospice and what kinds of volunteers help support your efforts. So let's just start anywhere that's interesting to you.
Wow, a big question.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here and happy to represent our hospice. Our hospice was planned. It was a twinkle in somebody's eye around 1984, and it came into existence in 1985. It was much tinier than it is now, only a couple of beds in the Middlesex Hospital.
So it's inside the hospital, or the hospice happens elsewhere as well?
Actually, it's a continuum of care. It's really a home care agency. It's really designed to keep patients at home with their families because that's where most patients want to be when they're terminally ill. And it is for people who have a life-limiting illness. For hospice, the prognosis that a person's physician and our medical director would agree on would be that 6 months or less. But that doesn't mean someone's going to die in 6 months because people exceed that all the time. It's just that that's your best guess based on, your medical history.
What do hospice caregivers do?
Well, they do all kinds of things. They're really there for symptom management. So they're taking care of you kind of in a holistic sense, but they're also taking care of the symptoms of your disease, and they're also trying to keep you comfortable, and they're trying to keep you pain-free. Then they're trying to also help you holistically. In other words, there's a social worker there. There's a whole team of people, and I think that's probably one of the most important things about hospice, is that it's an interdisciplinary team. So you have nurses, you have a nurse case manager, you have a social worker, you have home health aides, you have volunteers, you have spiritual care, you have dietary people. It's this whole team of people. They don't all go out together in a posse, but they go out individually and give you that kind of support throughout your illness. And then also at the end of your illness, when you die, whether that's at home or whether that's in our hospice unit, because if we need to stabilize you, if we need to get something under control, we bring you into the hospice unit and then hopefully stabilize your condition and send you back home. Or if you can't go back home because something's changed at home, but you are stable, then we might send you to a nursing home, a nursing facility, but the team would follow you into the nursing facility and give you another level of support there. It's really care that's gauged to keep you comfortable, but also manage your symptoms, and a lot of that is managing the pain, because if you're just fraught with pain, that's where all your energy is going.
Right.
And it's trying to keep you as alive as possible, to keep your quality of life as good as possible, and to keep you without pain, and that's what always made sense to me. I thought, that makes sense. I need to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful idea. And then your role in particular is to manage the volunteers?
Right. Hospice, this is a lot of people don't know this, but volunteers aren't just a nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
They are actually required by the hospice Medicare benefit that a certain percentage, and it happens to be 5% minimum, of the workers at hospice have to be volunteers.
Incredible.
So
I wonder do you know how that came to be?
I wish I could tell you, but
somebody very smart.
And the neat thing about it is, and I know this because I have a marketing background, my prior life, volunteers are the greatest ambassadors in the whole wide world because they go out into the community, they have neighbors, they have friends, and if they've had a good experience there, and they do, and they keep coming and they stay for a really long time, then they become really strong advocates. They also are keepers of the culture, because at hospice, what we're trying to do is create a culture that is as home-like as possible. And in order to do that, you need to have people who not only take care of the symptoms, but people who are there to sit with you and listen to you and try to keep you comfortable and take that extra little bit of time, to do the special things, whether it's bringing you your orange juice in a crystal glass, or setting up a doily, or painting your nails, or just 100 different things.
Sure.
And sometimes the nurses and the PCTs, those are our aides, would like to do that, but sometimes they get so busy
Sure.
that it's actually the volunteers that have that extra time. So when they're on the unit, we also have 3 shifts a day of 3 volunteers, 7 days a week. So what I do in my job is I place volunteers in home care. So if I have patients that want to volunteer in the home, or if they're in a skilled nursing facility, we'll assign a volunteer to the family. And then we also have these 3 shifts a day.
So somebody's
7 days a week.
volunteering. The old hospital shifts 11 to 7, 7 to 3, 3 to 11?
Actually, ours are 4 hours.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's 8 to 12, 12 to or 1 to 5, or 1 to 6, 12 to 4, or 1 to 5. Then we have an evening shift from 5 to 9. And I've recently been talking a lot of the Wesleyan kids into doing the middle of the night because they don't.
They don't,
sleep.
yeah, exactly. It's a prime time for them anyway.
So I don't know why we couldn't have Middlesex kids.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So when we come back, let's talk about the kind of life cycle of a volunteer from thinking I might want to do it to becoming oriented to doing it to just going out for the first time, all the way to also the impact on the volunteer. I got a million questions. So we'll be back in just a minute.
I'll be ready.
Okay, good. Well, I am back today with Barbara Stanke. This is Anna Wasesha at Middlesex Community College, and we're devoting this half-hour program to the hospice in general and hospice at Middlesex Hospital. So I thought we'd talk about I don't know if you think of it as a life cycle, but that initial, perhaps listening to this program, idea that someone might want to become involved as a hospice volunteer or maybe has experienced it personally and would like to get involved. Or I have a friend in the community who's one of your volunteers who retired and wanted to spend time dedicated to helping other people at that point in their life. So what is the progress? How do they...
What's the whole process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, we have volunteers of all different ages. We have volunteers that work and then actually come and work, on our unit in the evening.
Wow. And then you say you also have college students.
We have college
and I know a
students.
retiree, so you've across...
And we have lots of retirees.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we love retirees. People that are just used to being very, very useful and active, and then they retire and they go, what am I going to do with myself?
Right.
So let's just talk a little bit about the fact that our best volunteers have some internal motivation. I try to weed out people that are just looking for something to do, or who just lost a job and are twiddling their thumbs and thinking, and kind of see our ad and go, oh, maybe. Because it doesn't usually sustain itself. The people that make great volunteers have some calling to do it. Either they've just been intrigued with hospice, they think it's an incredibly good idea, it's just appealed to them intellectually, or they've had some experience with hospice, with someone dying, with hospice being part of their life, and they thought, wow, this was really an incredible idea, an incredible organization, I need to be part of it. And then the opposite is true too. If people have not had a good death experience, if they had parents who died on respirators and they could never talk to them, or parents that knew somebody in the family that had had so much aggressive treatment that they had been miserable and they'd been tied up to machines and really side effects that were worse than the disease itself, and they were thinking, oh, there must be a better way. So people with all different mindsets come to us, but there's usually some strong conviction, something that's making them pay attention to us and want to be there. For students, we have a lot of people who are interested in human service of one kind or another, a lot of pre-med students. And what they really like about it is that, because kids are doing internships and externships and all kinds of things, they want to have patient contact. And a lot of places will say, oh, you're going to have patient contact. And then you end up being the gopher for the person who has patient contact. We really do give you patient contact. And as much as you want, you can be as involved as you want in any part of our hospice program. So we have inpatient care in our hospice unit, we have home care, we have a bereavement service which actually stays in contact with the family for 11 months after the death.
Wonderful.
So
Wow.
we have volunteers doing bereavement groups, and then we have volunteers doing periodic bereavement calls to family members, just to stay in touch, to say hi, how are you doing?
So when I mean, you're sifting through people who think that they might want to volunteer. So there must be something, a way that you assess a certain level of maturity about dealing with death in general. You know, death is one of these things that we don't. We're so separated from it.
Yeah,
right.
We're so averse, you
Right,
know.
right.
Not like some other cultures that it's really just it's in the home, it's everywhere, and people just accept it. But here, I guess it all starts in the fall, just like everything else, the school year, but I start putting out feelers in the fall. I'll place bulletins on all the churches, church groups, local. I'll put something in the papers, the big papers, the little papers, and now online.
Mm-hmm.
So our community relations takes care of that for us. And then I start getting phone calls, and I kind of sound them out why they want to do it. And if they sound sincere, I make an interview. And so that's kind of the timing. I interview in the fall every year, and we only train once a year because it's pretty extensive training.
I would think so. So yeah,
So it starts in February. It's 4 Saturdays, complete Saturdays, 8 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pretty tired when you get out. And then it's one evening session, and then it's 12 hours of mentoring on the unit, on the inpatient unit, and you're assigned to an existing volunteer, and you shadow them for 12 hours, usually in 4-hour segments. And the 4 hours are assigned to your availability. So, you know, if you didn't have any classes on Thursday, then I'd assign you to a Thursday team. So that's kind of how the process goes. When I interview you, I'm really looking for motivation. I'm looking for just a really good person.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, all
right.
different kinds of people. We have, you know, all different sizes and shapes, and we have lots of survivors, people who have gone through illness themselves and have really beaten it or half beaten it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can walk down there's something for you to do. I mean, you know, if you're a good listener, we've had people with Parkinson's, and I think, or other disabilities, and I just try to make sure that they're with a team that can support them. So if I have someone that's not very athletic,
Mm-hmm.
Then I would put them with someone who is. If I have someone who just wants to sit with patients, and I don't mean just, I just meant that that's the only thing they want to do, we love that, but we want to make sure that there's somebody that can help the PCTs. On the unit, there's kind of 2 pulls for their time. There's a PCT, which is the patient care technician. It's like the nurse's aide of old.
Mm-hmm.
And so the volunteer helps the PCT. She doesn't do anything alone, or he doesn't do anything alone because they're not licensed to do it, but they help. So they help turn the patient, they help bathe the patient, they help feed the patient. They do a lot of patient care with the PCT. They get their hands in it, so to speak. And then the other side is that they sit with the patient, and they hear their stories, or they listen, or they sing, or they pray, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the patient wants.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a full kitchen, so they can cook.
Oh.
Family members can cook. There's a family room. There's cots, because we encourage all the family members to spend the night. So we really have a full house. Family starts coming a lot after work. Weekends are full of family. And it's quite a very homey place.
It must be rewarding to be a hospice volunteer, and then there also has to be some separation and bereavement that they experience, right?
Yeah, we work very, very hard we talk about boundaries a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we limit it to 4 hours a week, whether it's home care or on the unit, because when you start doing it longer, you start really getting into it. And, you know, if our patients become your family members,
Mm-hmm.
then you would grieve that way.
Mm-hmm. And you need to be helpful by not being that close. I was thinking that one thing, you're able to do some of that so that the family member can actually be the one who's up and close and
Right.
emotional about it. Yeah.
And part of it is, for the home care volunteers, they go into a family's home, and part of it is to be with a patient, but a good part is to give the caregiver some relief.
Sure.
So at hospice, we always say, and this is different than other places in the hospital, the people that we serve are both the patient and the family. So when a social worker goes into the house, or with the nurse, they're really looking at the whole family unit. The social worker is going to help you not only with reactions to grief, but they're really going to look at the financial situation and how you're going to pay for this and help. And you take on the whole family. So if you had a son who's having trouble with drugs, you're right in the middle of that as well. It's not just the patient. So
this is a really complex role.
It really is, and you just get involved in all of it. And it makes sense, because if you want the patient to have a good experience, we're really not talking about the death is already a given. It's going to happen at some point, like it is for all of us.
Right.
And we really don't know when. We can say 6 months, but it might not. We have people that stabilize and go off the program and then come back on the program that 2 years later are still alive, because you know what? We just don't know. We only can think we know. And so...
Yeah. I'm laughing about, the only thing we're sure about is death and taxes, but we know taxes are April 15th. We don't know about the death piece.
No, we just know we're not going to escape.
That's right. I'm sorry to say we have to take another break, but when we come back, we'll keep talking about hospice care here in Middlesex County. Barbara Stanke, welcome back.
Thank you.
That's the last piece of this radio program. And before the break, we were talking about the fact that sometimes hospice care is started up and then the patient will stabilize. You can move them off of hospice.
Right. That's the biggest misconception they have many different ones. I mean, first of all, one of the biggest misconceptions is they think it's depressing at hospice. They'll think, oh, you must be an angel that you work in hospice. Oh, it must be, how can you do that? And the truth is, it's not depressing. It is somehow so fulfilling to work there that we get the best people working there. We get the best volunteers, because you're not really changing the fact that someone has a terminal illness, but you are so changing their experience with it, how they experience it for themselves, that they can experience it pain-free, that they can have their family around them, that they can actually mend relationships. Ira Byock, who's been our speaker that we've gone to at conferences, and he's a doctor who specializes in end-of-life care, and he's at Dartmouth, I think. And he talks about end-of-life as a developmental stage, much like adolescence or birth, because he says you have insights at that time, and you can do things at that stage of life that you cannot do at any other stage. And families come together, and it's also a time of stress for families too. So you can, things can be exacerbated, but there's also potential for wonderful things to happen. It's so poignant. It's every bit as poignant and messy as birth.
Sure.
It's just so important, and you never, never, ever forget it. So getting back to your original question is, you thought, and many people think, that once you go on hospice, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But what often happens is they stabilize and they go off the program. Then when they need us again, they can come back on the program. And so when people come into the unit, into the inpatient unit, and we have 12 beds, they're private rooms, and plenty of room for the bed and the cot, and then a family room and the kitchen. So they can come in, and because they have round-the-clock skilled nursing, they actually sometimes do very, very well. And they get feeling good again, and they stabilize. And it's a good and bad about it. I mean, it's people get very happy being on the unit. Families get used to the care, and as I said, there's wonderful people involved, and they get stable and they have to go.
Mm-hmm.
We can't keep them when they're stable, because what that is, our inpatient unit is not a different part of hospice. It's part of the continuum of care. It's actually what we call a higher level of care. When they need 24-hour nursing, so they can't manage at home, and they need that kind of attention, we bring them into the unit. And so we have to justify to Medicare and Medicaid that they really do need that level, that they couldn't function well at home or in a nursing home, but they actually need that kind of specialized attention. So we give it to them, and happily, and they often stabilize, and then they're feeling quite good again, so they go back home.
Mm-hmm.
Until they need us again.
Right.
And so, and likewise in the program, if they're in the program, but all of a sudden they hit a period where they're going to be fine for quite a while, months. It could be years, because sometimes people do very well on hospice with that kind of care. I don't know whether it's, it's emotional care or it's a combination.
Mm-hmm. Also, that kind of psychic support. I think it's amazing to think about it as a developmental stage.
Yeah.
I love that idea. And I think where I had the preconceived and mistaken notion about it being the sort of last point is the old Catholic idea of extreme unction or last rites. Sort of like there's no way that you can be sure that it's going to be a linear process between finding out that you have a terminal illness and then...
Yeah, much of life is not linear.
No.
And afterwards, grief is not linear. We often say, when I'm interviewing volunteers, one of the things I look for is we actually have quite a deep conversation for about an hour because we talk about all kinds of things. Because what I'm trying to see is, do they have a lot of issues right now? Have they gone through a death in the family or a divorce or, some kind of trauma in their life that they're still dealing with? Because what I look for is stability, we've talked about that, reliability, but also someone who has their issues under control. Because if you don't, if you're still wrestling with them, and we all have issues, but if yours are fresh and raw, what's going to happen is they're going to bubble up somewhere. You think, okay, I'm going to leave them at home and I'm going to come here and I'm just going to be open and I'm just going to listen, because that's what we look for, people who can be open, non-judgmental, who can just be there. It's not about you, it's about the patient. It's about the family. You've got to leave your stuff at home. But what happens is if it's too raw, it kind of comes and jumps over the fence even though you don't want it to.
Sure.
So that's what we're kind of looking for. We're looking for just wonderful people, people who are warm, who like people, who want to be there, who are motivated to be there, who are going to show up when they say they're going to.
Oh, that's very important. Do you have a regular cycle of supporting your hospice volunteers so that they come back and maybe get recharged?
Well, we have monthly in-services. We do a lot for our volunteers.
Okay.
We feed them when they...
Oh, that's very good.
We give them lunch when they volunteer at the hospital. We have conferences. We have educational things. They really are a member of the team. So we have educational things for the nurses and the social workers, and they're invited to all of them. We have monthly educational sessions just for hospices. Just for the volunteers at hospice. And I'm just... The office door is always open. They come in all the time. And the other thing that happens too, I think that's quite spectacular, is that home care volunteers have to submit a report by email within 24 hours of their visit. So right away, I get their email. They tell me what it was like with the patient. I forward that on immediately to the nurse and the social worker that's taking care of that patient. And then I respond to them. And then I also keep a spreadsheet of their hours. We track their hours for the program.
So it becomes part of the charting. You're
charting. They really are part of the team, and they have the social. Let's say they have a patient, and they have the nurse's telephone number, and they have a social worker's telephone number, and they can call for an update at any time. We also, every Tuesday, we have an interdisciplinary meeting where we discuss half the home care patients and a portion of the palliative patients, and ask me about the palliative patients.
Yeah, okay. What about those palliative patients?
Yeah. So, but anyway, the volunteers can come to that meeting too.
Okay.
So they really are team members. Palliative care is a really big buzzword these days. Part of it is because it's not the H word. It's not hospice. It is a broader term to give comfort care, support, pain control, symptom management to people who might have a limited time in their life. In other words, they have some disease that's going to eventually limit their life, but the window is larger. And they might still be getting aggressive treatment. They might still be getting chemo or radiation, but they still have a lot of symptoms in between all that where they could really use support and care. And palliative care programs are growing all over the country right now, and I think a lot because people aren't as scared of it, as hospice.
Sure.
Hospice still means the end, and palliative means you can still get a lot of what you get at hospice, but no one is saying that you're going to die anytime soon.
Right. So this has been a very, very fast half hour. It always is. I want to be sure that our listeners know that if they want to find out more information about hospice for their own purposes, or if they would like to volunteer, they could go on the website.
They can go on the website, and they can call me at 358-6955.
Oh, perfect.
Always interested in just talking.
for people
And we
to
love young
volunteer.
people too. We
Okay,
just-
right. Of all ages.
Of all
Sizes
ages.
and shapes. But I really do want to thank you for coming by today. I've learned so much. Once again, your name is Barbara Stanke, and you're with Middlesex Hospital. And it's been a wonderful half hour talking with you about hospice. If listeners are interested in finding out more about the college, they can find us on the web at mxcc.edu. I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, wishing you all a good day.